What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sunday Sports Club podcast with Allison Kuch, a podcast all about sports told by a woman, and that woman is me. Hi, guys. I'm Allison Kuch, and today on episode 2 of Sunday Sports Club, we're going to be diving into fantasy football. What the fuck is fantasy football? Well, you're going to learn in today's episode. At the end of today's episode, you will know enough so that you can go and join a league with all your friends, your boyfriend's friends, who cares who you're joining with. You're going to be able to start your own team, and let's see if you come out on top this football season. And later on in the episode, we're also going to be having a real life NFL player's perspective on fantasy football. Yeah, you probably guessed it right. My husband's going to be coming on and giving his perspective of fantasy from a real life NFL player. No matter why you're here, I'm happy you're here. So let's dive into episode 2. What's up, guys? Welcome back. We are going to be talking about fantasy football today, and it's a good time to talk about fantasy football because real life football is about to begin on September 5th. So if you're listening to this podcast the day it's released, we only have a few more days until football season actually begins. We talked about it a little bit on the last episode of the infamous cut day and preseason. All of that is now over. It's in the past, and we are looking forward to real life football. And some guys are actually looking forward to, yes, fantasy football. So real life football does impact fantasy, which is why you need to have your fantasy team set up ahead of time, because how these guys are performing in these real season games are going to impact how your team does and if your team comes out on top at the end of the football season. But before we dive in, I'm going to be so fucking for real. You don't need to know anything about football to actually play fantasy football. Like, all you need is a platform, Yahoo Sports, ESPN, whatever platform you choose, they're going to calculate out all the points, and hell, they can even choose your players for you. Like, think of it as like spin the bottle, except you're not kissing anybody. They're just choosing your players, which, speaking of spin the bottle, I suggest you choose your own players. Like, don't have just some random computer do it. I'm talking like negatively on the computer. No offense to the computer's choosing, but make it fun. I mean, grab your group of girls, people from your Pilates class, whoever you want to join a league with and have your own team with, and decide to make it fun. Hell, you can come up with a team full of guys you just think are hot and watch you come out on top. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not going to judge, but I think you'll probably like watching your fantasy players a little bit more if, I don't know, they're good looking. Don't tell my husband I said that. The best way I can describe fantasy football is by comparing it to the game of Sims. I loved playing Sims growing up, and like I would always make my real life family, but on the game of Sims, I would like improve their cooking skills. I would have my daughter ditch school. I would make my mom date a bunch of guys and cheat on all of them. It's fun. It's not real. And that's the best way to describe fantasy football is it's not actually real. So like if a guy is a fan of, let's say like the Los Angeles Chargers, the Chargers could be doing really well, but his fantasy team could be doing horrible. And that's because guys on your fantasy team are a bunch of different players made up off of different teams. So like a team could be doing good, but your team could be doing bad. And it's kind of crazy that guys are so obsessed with fantasy football because, like I said, it's not fucking real. Guys growing up always made fun of girls for like playing house. Like, oh, you're going to go play house. Like, oh, just go be a girl. It's like you are literally playing make-believe with a fake team. Like, you're so poor you can't have your own football team in real life because I'm pretty sure you would need like billions of dollars to own an actual NFL team. So these guys are essentially just playing house with other guys. And it's like, oh, what player do you have? Oh, I want your player. It's just a game of house. It's a game of Sims. It doesn't actually matter. But the reason I think that you guys should go ahead and join a league and have your own team is I do think it is such a great way to learn about football, and it kind of gives you skin in the game. And when I say skin in the game, I'm not talking about like you actually going out there and suiting up in a helmet and pads and really tight pants that make your ass look good. No, I'm talking about skin in the game as in like, oh, I have this player on my fantasy team, so now I'm going to go and watch the Vikings play today and see how my guy does. But essentially, you're just watching the game of football. So I feel like it just gives, it's like a good beginner course to give you skin in the game, to have you have a reason to watch all of these games. At the end of the day, it's more fun to watch football if you have a reason to watch football. And when I say that, I mean, I definitely prefer to watch games that my husband is playing in over games that he's not playing in, you know? So like when he's on practice squad, am I actually watching the football game? No, I'm fucking shoving a churro down my throat because, hey, I'm just here for the stadium food. No offense to all of his teammates. But so I think fantasy football is a great way to like learn more about football. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're here because you want to know more about football. You want to know more about sports. And I think that this is a great way to learn more about football, is to have your own make-believe fantasy football team. Now, I'm not going to lie. I knew nothing about fantasy football up until like 5 seconds ago because I'm worried about real football. But fantasy football, as I've learned, it's simple. Like if you look at it straight on, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But there are so many intricacies that we're going to talk about in today's episode in like the least boring way possible. So I don't know much about fantasy. So if you're here and you're feeling intimidated, like, oh, I don't know anything about football, I don't know anything about fantasy, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Hey, same. So don't feel like I know everything. I know that's like shocking to some people, especially my husband. I don't know everything. Then I didn't know about fantasy football. So it's like we're learning together. I actually went ahead. I started my own league. So if you guys don't have a group of people you want to start a fantasy league with, join my league, Sunday Sports Club. I'm going to have it linked in like the show notes. I'll have it on the Instagram and we can figure this out together. I feel like my husband's going to be really butthurt if I'm choosing guys that are like not his friends. Sorry, I'm not sorry, but like I need to win this. So let's dive into what fantasy football actually is. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to notice that I have my laptop out and I literally have like handwritten notes of what fantasy is. You guys, like I said, it's straightforward, but like there's still so many intricacies. So, you know, I'm new here and I'm definitely going to be looking at my notes throughout this episode. Speaking of looking at my computer, if you guys aren't following us on social media, highly recommend going and doing that on Sunday Sports Club podcast socials and Allison Kuch socials. Football season is about to start. I'm actually doing something really fun for the start of the football season. I'm not going to get into that just yet because that's going to be its own episode, but go and follow me on Instagram if you're not already. And as for the Sunday Sports Club socials, it's just going to be nice to be like your big sister throughout this football season and even in other sports, the Olympics, all of it, because I'm going to be giving you guys pointers. If something big happens in the sports world, think of me as like your ESPN. But like not fucking boring. No offense to ESPN. ESPN's probably not listening to this, but if they are, you're not boring, I promise. But some people just can't understand you. It's not our fault. You're just speaking a different language and I don't have Duolingo on my phone yet. Okay, so if you look at fantasy football straight on, this is kind of what the gist of it is. You're going to join a league or you're going to start your own league and you're going to do that on a platform because who the fuck has time to calculate out their points? Who even wants to do that? I don't think anybody actually does that. And then you're going to do a draft with the people in your league and that's when you choose all the players to be on your team. And these are a bunch of different guys from different teams. So you're going to have your own little draft. You could have a little draft party. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then you're going to set your lineups with the team that you've drafted so that players are playing, you're like putting them out. If somebody gets hurt, you can like take them off of your team. If somebody's doing horrible, you can also cut them. That's going to be really fun for me, is being able to cut somebody after the amount of times that Isaac has been cut. He's really not been cut that many times. But you guys, you know what I'm saying. It's like my time for revenge. Like I'm going to cut some good players just so that they feel the hurt, even though it's just make believe. And then you're going to see how your players rush, pass, score touchdowns, and all of those are worth fantasy points. And each weekend you are going to match up against another person in your fantasy league and you go head to head. So it's not just like whoever has the most points wins. Some leagues do that, but like I don't recommend that. So like if I have a league with all of my friends and Isaac just so happens to be one of my friends in my league, and we go head to head, it's whoever has the most points amongst you two is going to win. And at the end of the season, whoever has that many wins is going to win fantasy league. But then we get into playoffs. We'll get to that in a second. You see, like it sounds straightforward, but there are still so many intricacies to it. So you're going to have matchups every weekend, and that's kind of give you a reason as to watch actual football. You guys, it's kind of like homework. Like real football games are your homework for fantasy, but it's not homework because you don't have to do anything. You really just have to sit on the couch. That's kind of the gist of fantasy football. It's not as complicated as people think, but like it is still kind of complicated. And I say that coming from somebody who knows a lot about football. My husband's been in the league for 7 years. I feel like I keep saying that. It's like people are like, yeah, we get it. Like he's in the NFL or he was in the NFL. Like he's currently not on Team Sis. It's like, okay, sorry. But I know a lot about football. And up until this point, I've known nothing about fantasy football. And I'm kind of excited to have my own team. Like it's time for me to sit in the driver's seat. You know what I'm saying? I wonder if me or Isaac are going to win. That'll be really interesting. So the reason all of us know anything about fantasy football is either because your boyfriend is obsessed with it, your husband, whoever, and somebody in your life is obsessed with fantasy football. And the only reason I really know anything about fantasy is from seeing all of these ridiculous, hey, I lost my fantasy league, this is what I have to do things. We've seen it all over TikTok. If you haven't, I highly recommend going and looking up like fantasy league losses or whatever. I saw recently a guy had to run in a full-blown pantsuit. Think of what you would wear to a job interview, and that's what he was wearing. And he had to run a 5K. I thought it was actually hilarious. It's like harmless fun. I also heard of a girl saying that her boyfriend broke up with her because he said he had too much on his plate. What was on his plate? Just the fact that he had a normal ass fucking job and was running a fantasy football team. It's not even real, but I'm telling you, these guys take this very seriously. Some take it more seriously than they do the actual football games. And it's like, I get why, because it's just like you're playing a game of house, but like it's so girl coded. This is why I say that sports aren't just the boys anymore. So let's jump into it. Let's get into the nitty gritty. I promise I'm going to make this as least boring as possible. Is that even a phrase? Least boring? So step one is you're going to set up a league. And this league is going to have everybody that you're playing against throughout the football season. And this can be your family. It could be all of your friends, the girls, people in your Pilates class, people you've met through your dog's doggy daycare. Like it doesn't really matter. I know I'm pretty sure there are public leagues. I have my league. If you want to join my league, you don't have anybody to start your own league with, highly recommend joining mine. And then you're going to pick a platform. So that's like ESPN, Yahoo, NFL.com. They all have fantasy sports websites or apps. And this is very crucial. Like this, don't skip this step, like please, because this is going to make things very easy. Like they're going to calculate out all the points. They're going to facilitate like when your draft is going to be. They're going to have all the players and like make things really easy and just like an online interface. So then what you're going to do is you're going to pick a person that you trust to be your commissioner. Think of this person as like camp counselor vibes, type A person who in your friend group is making reservations for dinner and lying to the entire group, telling them, hey, our dinner reservation's at 7 when it's actually at 7:30 because she knows that everyone's going to show up late. That person, the person that you trust, somebody who can maintain rules and organization, that is going to be your commissioner who is in charge. And they're going to help you guys along the way, hopefully. I mean, they really don't need to know anything about fantasy either, but they just need to be, in charge. And you are a manager of your own team. So everybody in your league is going to have their own team with their own players. Probably the most important fucking thing, you're going to choose your team name. I have not thought of my team name yet, which is actually kind of disappointing. Like, I feel like I'm a pretty witty person and I haven't came up with my team name. Come back and, well, I guess you guys, if you join my fantasy league, you'll see my team name. But if you have any recommendations, go and leave them on the Instagram. So then we have step 2, the draft. Obviously, this is a very important step. Don't miss this step either, because this is going to determine what players are on your fantasy team. Now, I highly recommend just, off the bat, do not choose players that are all on the same team, because if the team starts sucking and players aren't playing good, you're going to wish that you had players on other NFL teams. So you're going to schedule to do your draft with the rest of the league. And I think that you should really have fun with it. Like, those TikToks where you see people like doing themed drinks and everyone brings a drink, or like everyone does like a board, like a McDonald's charcuterie board or a chocolate charcuterie board. Like, have a party, make this fun. Like I said, it's so girl coded. All of these guys have these draft parties for make-believe teams, and they're like drinking, they're hanging out, they're coming home at 3 a.m. like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, yeah, like let's have fun with this part too. So throw a party for the draft, or like have a Zoom party if you're doing it with friends who are like not near you. Honestly, that's what I should do. I feel like I should start a fantasy league with all my friends who don't live in the same place that I do. Shout out to the NFL for that. But the commissioner is really going to be in charge of the draft, obviously to keep order in, and you need the draft to happen before the actual NFL season starts, which is why it's so important that I film this episode and it go live before football season starts, because once the season starts, I don't even know if you can join a league after that, because it's like, well, yeah, you're going to pick that guy. Like, he has fantasy points. So you need to do this before September 5th. Send this podcast to all your friends and be like, hey, we're doing this September 4th. Like, get your shit together, Carol. Now, during the draft, you're going to set your roster, and they're going to include quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, kickers, and teams, defenses, and special teams. You might be like, what the fuck are all those words? They're just different players, and you're going to need them on your team. So if you haven't listened to season 1, I kind of dive a little bit into like what a running back is, wide receiver, yada, yada, yada. You know what? Maybe on the Instagram, I'll just give you a little like cheat sheet as to what these players are. But essentially, you just need players who are going to score a lot of points, get a lot of yards, and you need defenses who are really fucking good. And I would, usually advise you to take the defense that my husband's on, but to be determined in that case. And then you're also going to need special teams, because kickers, surprisingly enough, like kickers sometimes have the most points in an entire NFL like roster, because they're kicking in every single game, and like a quarterback could go multiple games without scoring points. So yeah, each actual NFL player is going to have a ranking on whatever platform that you use, and that can help you choose. So like when in doubt, you can go with that, or again, you can make it fun and just choose guys who are like attractive. You could even have a lot of fun with a draft and like, oh, I'm only drafting guys who have wives that like dress really cute to games. I probably wouldn't help my husband get drafted in that aspect, because I'm going to games with my pants undone. Pregnancy is an excuse, but like, come on, girl. Like, you were front row. So you can just make it fun. Like, have guys with really great hair, have guys with cool backstories. It doesn't really matter who you're drafting. At the end of the day, it's all make believe, but it's going to be fun. So the draft order can be really unique. You can use the platform's like recommendation for a draft order. And when I say draft order, like who's going to pick what player first, second, third, fourth. And there's a really popular draft order way of drafting. It's called the snake draft. It's the most popular. Let's say your friends' names are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 will go first, obviously. 2nd will go second, whatever, yada, 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 all the way until 4th. And then the 4th will pick last, but then the 4th will also pick first in the 2nd round. And it'll keep doing that until your rosters are full. How many guys are going to be on your roster? That's a great question. I wish I would have researched that before this episode. You can also just choose to do your own draft order by like picking a name out of a hat. You can have a computer do it for you. Some guys, again, this is so girl coded, will have a famous person on Cameo read off the draft order. You guys, I think this is so fucking hilarious. The guys that came up with these ideas, I'm just like, it's so cute. Like, it's literally so cute. The fact that guys are just like sitting in a room, like drinking a good old beer. Oh my God, like we should get The Rock to name off our draft list. It's like, okay. I just think it's really adorable. When it comes to drafting, a lot of people are like, oh, you should choose a wide receiver or like a running back first. No, I would recommend going for a quarterback and going for a quarterback that runs. That's like the most high level advice I'm going to give, is like get a really versatile quarterback. And when I say versatile quarterback, I mean like Phillip Rivers. I don't think, I know he got some touchdowns, but like he was not a very like athletic in terms of like, oh, he's running the ball, he's taking hits. Now some good quarterbacks, Mahomes is a good one, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, players who are maybe a little bit younger, who aren't afraid to take a hit every now and then, the rugged guys. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. Anyways, moving on. I'm going to talk about scoring real quick, since we're talking about guys and like what players you're drafting, because scoring is obviously important, even though you're not going to really need to know how it's scored. So you get points based off of actual NFL games that are happening. But remember, it doesn't matter how the team's doing. It just matters how your player is playing. So you get points for rushing, passing, and receiving. Rushing, what the fuck is that? It's when a guy is like running the ball and is getting yards. So players who are getting a lot of yards, who always have the ball, like those are players that you want to have on your team. You also get points for touchdowns. You also get points for successful field goals, and you get extra points if the field goal is more than 50 yards. You need to know like the gist of football, but like you really don't, because you don't need to know any of this because the computer is going to know all this for you. And then the negative thing, like never take a quarterback who is really high in turnovers. Like he drops the ball, he has a lot of interceptions. And I mean, like obviously players vary year to year. Can you listen to me talking about guys like you don't want a guy that has a lot of turnovers? It's like I'm literally saying that while sitting on my couch. I'm not playing football. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe you threw that interception. It's like not that hard. And then you see like a 300-pound man running at you and I'm like, yeah, like how did you throw that interception? It's like really easy for me to talk shit from sitting on my couch. Speaking of turnovers, those are negative points. So you don't want people who are like constantly dropping the ball. You don't want those butterfinger guy. I don't even know what that means, but you get negative points for turnovers. So like stay away from guys who are throwing interceptions. And I'll try and stay away from them too. There's a lot of complicated ways to score in fantasy. There's another way called PPR, which is points per reception. And you get a point every time a player that you have gets a reception or a catch or, you know, I'm not going to get too into the nitty gritty in that because like I said, that doesn't actually matter. It really matters for like the scoring, but it doesn't necessarily matter for, I mean, I guess it kind of does matter for your roster. Not me sitting here just like contradicting myself. You just want a player who is like getting thrown the ball a lot. You want a player who's throwing the ball a lot. You want a player who's getting a lot of touchdowns. Like that's the gist of fantasy is that you want good players. But then again, if you want to choose players based off of them just being hot, that's totally fine. Whatever you choose, the app isn't calculated out for you. So like you don't need to be sweating. Now, step 3 are the weekly matchups. So this is when you're going to go face to face with somebody else in your league and shocker, the person with the most points wins in that face off. So like, even though like, let's say me and Isaac are doing a little face off, I'm obviously going to win because my team's obviously going to be better than his. And somebody else in my league could have more points and like lose because in their face off, they could have had less points than the other person. You know what are you picking up what I'm putting down? So wins and losses are going to essentially determine your ranking in the league. And at the end of the league, you're going to have playoffs. I think this is where you get skin in the game, not only because you're watching NFL games, like actual, not the make-believe ones, but the actual NFL games. But it's also a really good time to like talk shit. So that's why I'm really looking forward to me and Isaac having our own fantasy league and fantasy teams because I just know it. Like I love talking shit. Now, something a little bit more complicated, I apologize in advance, is roster management. So between these weekly matchups, you're going to have time to change your roster and like change out your lineup. And the reason that they have this is because injuries in real life are going to affect your injuries in fantasy football. So like if a player breaks his ankle and he's out, and somebody else is in, it's like, okay, you're obviously not going to want that player on your team because he's going to score 0 points because he's not dressing up. He's not showing out. So you're going to want to get rid of that guy and get a new guy. And then also you can do trades. You can trade a player based off of like, oh, like, see, this is like where it gets a little bit more intricate and like you might need to know a little bit more football. Like if you're doing trades, it's some pretty like intricate shit because, for example, like if I know that a team is going to throw the ball a lot because they're playing a defense that's really fucking good, they're usually going to throw the ball. It just like based off of like certain offense and defense matchups, you could trade to another player in your fantasy league. It's a little bit more complicated. So when you do your whole draft for your fantasy team, you're obviously going to have leftover players who aren't drafted. Poor them. I was once picked last for dodgeball in high school, so I kind of get that. But they're not going to feel the pain because they have no idea what's going on because, like I said, it's fantasy. So it's called the waiver wire. So when players aren't on a team in your league, you can pick them up off of the waiver wire. And so if a player is injured on your team, you cut them, which must be nice to have the power in your hands for once. I know it's going to be nice for me. So they go on the waiver wire and like have to go through waivers for like 24 to 48 hours. waivers. It'll go through if somebody wants to pick them up, but why would you cut somebody that's good, And then at the end of waivers, it's like they'll be good to be picked up whenever. But like I said, you don't really need to know that much. That's where like the platforms that you choose to have your fantasy league on can really like step in there and like facilitate some of these things. But definitely you need to keep up to date with your team, because like if a player is playing horrible, cut their ass. Like, do not keep them on your team. Cut their ass. Just be a little ruthless. I know I'm going to be. Then step 4. So just like in a real football season, you're going to like have games and you're going to have matchups. And then at the end is going to be playoffs. So after the regular season ends, the top players in the league are going to enter a playoff bracket. And the winner of the playoff bracket is going to win the championship. Duh. So before, like when you guys have your draft party, I highly recommend coming out with, I should make like another cheat sheet on this. To my producer, Annie, if you're listening, we should make a cheat sheet on this. So if you, before, like when you have your draft and you're getting all these guys, half of the fun is the win and losses. Don't do money. That's boring as fuck. Do something fun. Like, oh, we have to go to a club and everyone has to sing happy birthday to me. Or like, oh, we're going on like a girls trip and we have to act like I'm the bride. Or like, I don't know. I mean, I like being the center of attention. So like, obviously you can see my wins are like, everything's revolved around me. But like, don't make it money. I mean, it could be fun with money, but like that gets kind of boring. Like go out to like IHOP and buy your breakfast or whatever, like you guys decide as a group what you all want to win. And then for the loss, that's also really fun. And I can give you guys some fun loss ideas. For example, loser has to take the SATs. Abso-fucking-lutely not. I sweat when I record this podcast. You're going to make me go in and take a test? I actually never took the SATs, only the ACTs. I don't know, guys. I'm about to turn 30. There's also something called the IHOP challenge, and a loser has to sit in IHOP for 24 hours, and every pancake they eat, they get 30 minutes knocked off their time. I feel like I would only be sitting there for like 3 hours. Like, let's be fucking for real. Like, I can eat a fuck ton of pancakes. Another thing, sit in the dark closet and finish a 300-person puzzle with a headlamp, and they can't come out until it's done. Oh, God. Get a little claustrophobic, so that wouldn't be for me. You get a tattoo. Those things are forever, but not lip tattoos, although mine's still in there deep and it's been 4 years. Or butler for the day. I like this idea for a loss. The league has a party and the loser has to be the butler. Sounds fun. Now, what would I consider a punishment? I don't know. I'm a pretty badass person. Maybe like if I wasn't able to be on my phone for a week, but I'm like, I literally do work on my phone. It's like, actually, I wouldn't mind that. Maybe that should be my win, is that I get to go on a vacation without my phone. Maybe not being able to hang out with Scotty, but like whoever would make me not hang out with my daughter, like you're fucked up in the head. You know what? Why don't you guys head over to the Instagram? Tell me something that you think is funny for like a consequence of losing their fantasy league. But like, honestly, that's kind of the general gist of fantasy football. See, like I said, it's pretty straightforward and like, there's some intricacies. It's clear the guys came up with these rules and like they're just really jealous that they can't ever own their own NFL team. I mean, you need millions and maybe $1 billion. So it makes sense. But the fact that like there are so many intricacies, it's like some guys were just sitting in their basements like, we should do this. No. And then this. And then if you lose, you're going to have to go to IHOP. It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm not always making fun of guys. I do think they came up with a really great thing to do, which is fantasy football. And I am actually really looking forward to having my own fantasy team, and I'm going to kick all of your asses. Honestly, I feel like the winner of my fantasy league, like I'll give a bunch of my favorite products. Maybe that'll be fun. And I'm not talking about like boring shit. I mean like fun stuff. Let me make sure that I legally can do that. But I'll go on the Instagram. I'll come from all this. But like I said, you don't need to be invited to somebody's league. You can grab people, whoever you want, and start your own league. You can join your boyfriend's friends' leagues. Like, I don't think they're really going to give a fuck if you join. I think they're going to give a fuck if you win because they're going to be jealous. But like, you can really join with anybody. I think it's just really fun in general to have your own fantasy team. You're going to get into the games more because you have skin in the game. You're going to get to know the players. You can research their wives. You can be like, oh, wow, that guy was kind of off this week. I wonder why. And you're going to go to his Instagram and be like, oh, his wife gave birth. That's why he was off this week. Yeah, like my fantasy team, yeah, we might have lost this week, but like I have a new child on my team. Like, it's going to give you a reason to like root for some of these players. And at the end of the day, you have nothing to lose unless you do lose and you have to go and sit in IHOP and like stuff pancakes down your throat, which honestly, that's not really a loss for me. That's kind of a win for me. Sounds fun. Now that we covered all of that, let me go grab Isaac and we're going to get his take on fantasy football from a real life NFL player. Hold on. I need to go and contact his boss, AKA Scotty, and see if she's going to let him give us 2 cents. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know how else to transition into having Isaac here, but what's up? Welcome, Isaac Kuch, to the show.
Up?
You guys, I have a real life NFL player here. I emptied out the budget. We got him his own comfy chair, which is actually a stool if you're watching this on YouTube. But we emptied out the budget to pay his rates to get him here.
Yeah, I get dinner later too.
Absolutely not. You're always paying for dinner, no matter if we're married. I was going to say
And
if we're
cooking.
not. But anyways, we have Isaac Rochelle here. He has been in the NFL for over 7 years, going into year 8. And he is going to give his perspective on fantasy football from a real life football player. Isaac, what do you know about fantasy football?
I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode. Honestly, I don't know anything about fantasy. I know it's like basically like the Brodies can get together and have a league. And
So can the girls, Isaac.
Girls don't know sports. And yeah, there's like you're like a coach. You choose your player. You can sub your play. I don't know.
No, so he actually knows absolutely nothing. Something I needed to do when I was doing my due diligence for this episode and trying to learn anything about fantasy is I actually texted Isaac's football agent. His name is Brian. Everyone say, hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
So I texted Brian and I was like, hey, can NFL players play fantasy football? Because a lot of you might not know this, NFL players can't bet on football games, which that makes a lot of sense. If Isaac's betting on the Raiders, if they're going to win or lose, he could easily go ahead. Well, you're not like in the position, like you're not a quarterback, so you can't really make the decision to purposefully lose the game.
But I could give a lot of information to the other team.
For sure. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Like our whole defensive game plan, like there's blitzes we come up with that we've never done before. You do that purposely. You come up with random plays. That's not for this episode.
Juicy.
But for the fantasy league, when I do get signed, I'll make sure to come on here and be like, hey, for the girlies, here's the defensive play. No, I won't do that. Maybe.
No, but
I could do it for you though. That's crazy. I could actually be like, hey, Allie, like I would definitely.
Okay, see, that's where it gets really interesting because Brian was like, yeah, he actually can play fantasy football, but he can only win a prize up to $250, which that's not paying our fucking bills. I mean, $250 is $250, whatever. But like something I thought was really cool is that there are no rules on NFL wives betting and playing fantasy football. And I'm not going to lie, you guys, I know more than commentators. And it's not because Isaac's coming home and is like, oh, so-and-so is actually not going to play, even though it shows him as questionable. No, it's more so because, for example, last year, a bunch of the girls got together like a limo or like a bus or whatever. And if a girl's not contributing $60, and she's like, oh, I'm not coming to the game. I know damn well you're not coming to the game because your husband's not playing. So it's interesting because I definitely have like the behind the scenes wherewithal to know like, oh, like that player's not playing. So am I cheating? Am I a cheater?
You know who's, out and about on a Friday night.
Yeah, like I know that guy, I know that girl is going to go to her husband and be like, hey, I know you cheated on me. I'm kidding. Not all athletes are cheaters, you guys. Get your head out of the fucking gutter. But I know like, oh, that girl's going into labor. Her husband's not going to have a good game, or maybe the opposite.
Maybe he's not going to play. You don't have to be at the game if your girl's in labor.
So if you're an NFL wife, this is super unrelatable. If you're an NFL wife, you should totally join fantasy football and like a public league and like bet a lot of money, because I'm sure you know more than like the Joe Schmo on the street. I mean, not that much, because it's not like you're building a team based off only players on the same. Anyways, I'm good. Yeah.
Do you want to be a GM?
Like a real life GM? Yeah, that sounds fun, to be in control of other people's lives instead of being on the other side and just getting.
Yeah, like being able to keep somebody on your team 2 weeks before they give birth, like intentionally.
Okay, can we just talk about that for a second? Like you and I should just do our whole episode on that. But I feel like, yeah, if I'm a GM, I'm not going to release a player. Like if he's hurt, if his ankle's sprained, I'm going to keep him. I'm going to be real. No, I'm not, guys. Back to fantasy football, Isaac. Back to the make-believe shit.
Back to fantasy suites.
NFL players that you know or any of your friends play fantasy football?
Yeah, guys definitely talk about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, these dudes are gamers. They're competitive with football. They play video games. They play fantasy. They play
So they wake
everything.
up and go to football and then come home and play fantasy, make believe football.
Yeah, they're like going to practice, and like if they had a bad practice, they bench themselves.
Can you imagine? Okay, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that like NFL players would actually play fantasy football.
No, they definitely play. It's not really talked about. Like we're not like going into our meeting room like talking about how we did in fantasy, but guys definitely play.
Interesting. I'm not gonna focus on like make believe football. I'm gonna focus on the real football. Who would you?
Says the person who plays Sims. You need to focus on real life.
I haven't played since I had a baby. Okay, moving on.
That's like okay.
Who would you first draft onto your fantasy team, like position wise?
Well, I did a little research with you, so I'm not gonna say running back. I know that's the right answer, but I'm gonna say I would naturally, knowing what I know, I'd be like quarterback.
See, no, everybody out in the public recommends drafting a running back first or wide receiver. I think a quarterback can act as both those players and a quarterback, so I feel like it makes sense.
My quarterback would be Herbert. Like he'd be the quarterback.
No,
that I got
Herbert
first.
gets hurt too much. No offense, Herbert.
Yeah,
I know you're not. I know you're not listening to this, Herbert.
Herbert literally comes out of games with like 500 yards. Like
but then again, he is a very like not heavy duty. He's like he's played with broken
guys. Like
yeah, he's stiff arming
you guys should
Isaac.
look up that clip. Just type TikTok Isaac stiff armed. I literally had to block words. I blocked stiff arm, daddy.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sorry, it was bad.
Justin Herbert stiff armed Isaac and
really
it went viral. We don't need to talk about it. See, this is what happens. We make fun of our trauma. But yeah, Justin Herbert has played with broken fingers before. So he's a great quarterback to draft. I also recommended earlier in this podcast, like Josh Allen and Mahomes, obviously. Like people, like quarterbacks who are like athletic.
Who's the diamond in the rough quarterback pickup this year? Key quarterback that people could get. Honestly, Dak Prescott. Here's why I think Dak Prescott. The Cowboys had to make Dak Prescott, like he has to do something this year. And they're going to try to force it, which means he's probably going to have a lot of passing yards. And he's athletic enough to have some rushing yards. So Dak Prescott is probably going to be a sneaky good fantasy.
There you have it, girls. Go and draft Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and when you're going to draft him and all the dudes are going to be like, you're drafting Dak Prescott.
I love how Isaac is mocking other men.
Because I just know how dudes think. They're going to be like, the Cowboys haven't won the playoffs. It's like, all right.
Moving on. Last question. Do football players think about fantasy teams and points when they're actually playing?
You have to be on a team to do that. I'm just being very honest. I'm not thinking about any.
Isaac, you've been in the NFL for 7 years. Just give us a real answer. Are NFL players like down there being like, oh, I wonder if that got people like fantasy points?
For sure. I can think of one player in particular that used to think about his own fantasy points.
Shut the fuck up.
I'm not going to say his name.
Now I want to know. Can you whisper it?
Well, you can bleep it out. Melvin.
Let me honestly, doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, he's also broke, but that doesn't matter.
Isaac.
I'm being serious. He played. It's been like 10 years. Dude has no cash.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we should have a whole episode about players going broke. The statistics aren't true, but players definitely spend way too much money. But back to thinking about fantasy teams and points, it's definitely thought about. Is it talked about intensely? No. But again, if guys are in a league, like, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I guess so. Moving on.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Oh my God.
I've actually heard of like a guy, I can't even think of the person. It's just, I remember the combo. Somebody going like, we lost, but they were like, but my fantasy did well. It's just honest though. Like if you're in a league, it's just fun. You're just a human. Like you're just having fun competing.
Yeah, I guess so. I always say like, I just think it's like so funny that like people have make believe teams.
Yeah.
They're just playing house. You be the dad, I'll be the mom. We're just playing house.
Yeah.
Moving on to mailbag.
Wait.
What?
What is
mailbag? So every episode, Isaac's clearly not a fan of the podcast because he has no idea what mailbag is. So if you guys are new here, just like Isaac, mailbag is I am going to have you guys write in on why you are a fan of the team you're a fan of. That could be because your great uncle won a Super Bowl. That could be because your first boyfriend gave you a jersey and now you've always been a fan. I want to know why you're a fan. And if you go in the show notes, it'll have the link where you guys can fill out why you're a fan. Last week, I talked about how I'm a huge fan of whoever pays our bills. And this week, Isaac, what team are you a fan of?
Hey, hold on. You have to have a way more intense thing for that. Like, you need to say, we just got a letter.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter.
What team do you love?
Isaac. Okay, fine. We'll do that.
That's fun.
Okay, Isaac, do you want me to sing it again,
Yeah,
or
let's go.
can you answer it?
Go. No, sing it.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. What team are you a fan of?
Chargers. Honestly, like when I'm done with my career, I'm gonna be a Chargers fan. Just because we're so close. Literally, the training where I did training camp my whole time with the Chargers is right up the road from us, and we just have a sentimental value. I'll probably get a Chargers tattoo when I'm done. Honestly, not like as a cheesy you're a fan, but like the Chargers changed our life. Like being able to play in the NFL, they gave me an opportunity. Shout out Tom Telesco, drafted me 7th round.
He's now a GM with the Raiders.
But seriously,
that makes total sense.
It's easily the Chargers. So
it is crazy because I do like, even though I'm like through and through like a little Lions fan, I love the Los Angeles Chargers. I think just because they were such a family oriented team, like the Spanos family and like even Telesco's, like I just feel like it was such a family geared team. And even now, despite the fact that you've been off of the team for almost 4 years, we still have a lot of like good connections, and I feel like that's kind of like where our love grew.
There's not many scenarios where I would play football for free because it's such a violent sport. I would play for the Chargers for free. If they offered me,
I hope
$1,
the Chargers are listening because I would love to stay in California
for
and have you play
free.
for the Chargers.
I would play for free. Literally,
we're gonna raise our daughter to be a Chargers fan. You heard that. You heard that first here.
They're like, oh, we need a guy. We need a free, really good backup. Isaac.
Brian's listening to this. Like,
man.
There are 2 names you're going to learn on this podcast. One is Annie, that she's my producer. She has to watch all these episodes. Sorry to Annie, because she has to watch me talk to myself a lot. And 2 is Brian. And Brian is Isaac's football agent. Love Brian. I text him all the time with like the stupidest questions, like, what's a sack? I've never asked him that, but like it's just like the questions that nobody else seems to have the answers to. But he told me that when you take your test to become an agent, it's open book.
These agents are.
I know more than they
do.
Anyways, okay. So Isaac is a Charger fan,
and if you're
don't go and tell any NFL teams that though.
It doesn't. I will play for whoever, not for free. I'm joking. And if you're listening at this point in the episode, I, just for my personal mind, want to know if you like the Mailbag song. I think it's a hit.
Anyways, if you guys want your story read here on the podcast, be sure to click the link in the show notes where you can fill out why you're a fan. And next week, I'm excited to like finally tell somebody else's why they're a fan, because up until this point, it's been me and Isaac. Although Isaac did give me information I didn't know. Okay, Isaac, thanks for coming on. I'll send your check in the mail.
We just got a letter. Yeah, like fades out. Okay, yeah, appreciate you having me on.
That is it for today's episode of Sunday Sports Club Podcast with Allison Kuch. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something about fantasy football to the point where it's influencing you. Call me an influencer. It's influencing you to go and start your own league or your own team and have fun with it. At the end of the day, like it doesn't need to be that intense. Have so much fun. Do these draft parties with your girls. Have watch parties. Sports aren't just for the boys anymore. And also, this week, we are coming out with the first episode of Huddle Up on Thursday, where I'll give you guys some juicy, up-to-date news. And that's where you're going to find more of like the football, like what teams are winning, what teams are losing. Basically, if you want to brag to your boyfriend, husband, cousin, ex-boyfriend, I don't care what you're doing, but if you want to brag to any of them about knowing about sports, you should probably listen to those episodes. They're going to be like 10 to 15 minutes long, very digestible, something you can listen to literally before you walk into like a tailgate and you're like, oh, like I know this team is kind of struggling. And people are like, what the fuck? How do you know that? Yeah, well, I learned it on Sunday Sports Club podcast. That's the answer. So Be sure to tune in every Sunday and Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to go leave us a 5-star review because my husband still doesn't have a job. So I'm really hoping this podcast takes off. But I'm so excited you guys are here for this football season. Episode 2 down, plenty more to go. And thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. Holy fuck, that was a good episode.